Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Our next presenters are Clement Pang with VMware and Demetri Mouratis with Box. Please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you everyone for coming. I want to introduce myself. I'm Clement. I'm one of the co-founder of Wavefront. We are a company that started in Palo Alto. We started in 4.5 years ago. And we started on this metrics journey of building a SaaS platform that allows companies to analyze metrics at scale and also allow them to monitor whatever that they're doing, machines, applications, software, business metrics, and whatnot. We have a lot of very exciting customers on our journey. Box is one of them, which I had the privilege to share a stage with Demetri today. We also have Lyft, British Gas, Intuit, Workday, just very illustrious SaaS companies and company at scale that worked with us closely as we developed our platform for them. So in May of this year, it was announced that we were getting acquired by VMware. And so we are now still a kind of startup group within VMware as we start to get more exposure to the larger customer base of VMware. And obviously, a lot of them are in this journey of getting into the cloud, getting into hybrid cloud, and we're there to help them along that path. So just a very quick overview on what is Wavefront. So Wavefront is a SaaS platform, as I said. So it lives on AWS itself, and it allows any person in a company to send metrics into the system. So the metric could be coming from machines, it could be coming from AWS infrastructure, it could be coming from business logic, it could be coming from an external service, and all of that, as long as it is time series data, as long as you could track it, as long as it has a numerical value and a timestamp, you could send it to Wavefront. So Wavefront is a highly scalable platform that could take up to millions of points per second. And not only can you ingest it into the platform, we also have a query language that allows you to query that data quickly at scale back to the user so that you could visualize it and alert on top of it. So again, I mentioned Box has been an amazing partner along this journey. So I want to welcome Demetri, who is a senior staff SRE at Box, who has been with us on this journey to talk about how they leverage Wavefront on their journey to AWS. So with that, Demetri.
Thank you, Clement. Hi, Demetri Mouratis, Senior Staff Site Reliability Engineer with Box. Here to talk a little bit about what's been going on in our journey to the cloud. Leveraging Wavefront is a big part of our journey and getting there. So just briefly about Box, we're a cloud content management company that empowers enterprises to revolutionize how they work by securely connecting their people, information, and applications. We have approximately 52 million users and over 74,000 paying organizations. Our SRE team is about 20 people, and we're responsible for the production infrastructure, tooling, and support of about another 400 engineers. So before talking about Wavefront, let me first reveal some of the problems that Box was running into with our pre-existing open source solution. We were leveraging an open source tool called OpenTSDB, which provided pretty rudimentary graphing and pretty rudimentary instrumentation. When we started trying to manage the site using this tool, we ran into 3 major problems. The first was with scale, like how many metrics can this thing handle? Second was capacity. Again, how many metrics, but also the read and writes, the size of the database over time. And the third problem we had was with uptime. We simply couldn't keep the system up to such an extent that we could use it as a fundamental part of the Box infrastructure. So enter Wavefront. I think of Wavefront as a metrics SaaS company. For us, that means we no longer have to run any of this infrastructure. We simply have to instrument our code, instrument our infrastructure, and ship our metrics into Wavefront, and then they handle all of the aggregation, all of the retention, all of the dashboarding, query languages, so that we don't have to. That's a tremendously powerful lift up for Box, because these are not things that we're particularly strong at doing, and that's their sole purpose for existing. So some examples of things that we're able to do are like spot and reserved instance pricing, OS metrics, all the basics, application performance, and we have about 800 total dashboards for a team of about 400 engineers. So that gives you an idea of like how widely adopted Wavefront has been for us at Box. If you think about the key benefits that Wavefront brings to Box, I would summarize them as like real-time visibility. Everybody running a production infrastructure needs to have real-time visibility into their application, into their infrastructure in order to run their business. The dashboards are extremely powerful, and I'll show you a couple examples in the next slides. By outsourcing this chunk of our responsibility to Wavefront, it allowed us to focus on higher leverage activities that were more germane to our customer base, and to get ourselves out of the undifferentiated heavy lifting, to quote Werner Vogels. So it's been hugely impactful from my perception to engineer satisfaction. Every time I talk to engineers at Box, many times they'll have Wavefront dashboards up on their screens, they're in the hallways, they're part and parcel of how we troubleshoot and fix the site in real time. So it's really become integral to the way that Box manages our infrastructure and our service. Here's an example of one of the dashboards. This happened to be one that I created. The thing that I like about this type of dashboard is that it's available to anybody inside the company, so we can all be looking literally at the same page. And these are real-time stats that are updated as changes happen in AWS. This is showing us things like what percentage of infrastructure is running on AWS versus on-premises. What is the throughput and CPU utilization of all of our different server types? What does the network look like, et cetera. So it's super handy to have this all in one dashboard that you can create kind of from scratch yourself. Here's another dashboard that we use to leverage spot pricing. So it turned out that Amazon didn't expose this metric, but they could expose an API call. So we wrote a simple shell script to go out and parse the spot pricing for all the instance types that we were using. We were able to send that data into Wavefront and then visualize it with these little dots on the graph to show us spikes in pricing or to explain why spot instances may have been terminated prematurely, et cetera. Another super awesome thing for us is to be able to do capacity planning using graphs. I think the tendency is like if you go around and ask an engineer, okay, next quarter, do you want 10 new servers or do you want 20? The answer will be invariably 20. And if you do that quarter after quarter after quarter, systems just start to accrue and get way too big and way too cost inefficient. Contrast that with a data-driven approach where an engineer, the manager, the capacity team, whoever is concerned, can sit down and look at an actual graph of how much of the capacity that we've given you have you historically used, and how much do you see that growing over time. That's a much healthier place to have a capacity discussion from, rather than a drive-by conversation with an engineer who's just going to say, you know, basically give me more. So capacity planning has been hugely impactful for us by leveraging Wavefront. I think another thing that's really gets highlighted by the fact that we have such fine-grained and detailed information is that we can spot trends in our data. Here I'm showing the number of instances over time that we use to manage one of the Box services. And you'll see the data is pretty spiky. Now, I know this data intimately well because it's my data. You probably have similar graphs of your own data. But what stands out to me in this graph is that there are basically 5 peaks throughout the work week corresponding to the 5 work days. And then on the weekends, the traffic starts to lull down and it's not as high. So we can take advantage of that fact and use things like spot instances, dynamically auto-scaling groups to use the metrics that are coming from our system to help drive the system itself. So you have a feedback loop. And I think that's a superpower that you get if you spend the time to instrument your code, design your services, and leverage things that Amazon or other cloud providers maybe provide to you to right-size your infrastructure in real time and keep your costs under control. We've had pretty strong adoption of Wavefront throughout Box. One of my favorite things about this slide is that I think myself or another engineer on the team created this slide, and then I found it in a slide deck getting shown to the executives in the company. They didn't create the slide. They didn't create the graph. They just grabbed it. So this is a level of influence that you can have over decision making. If you have the right data and you have the right graphs, if your culture supports making decisions based on data, which you should, you now have very simple, very easy to understand, very plain as day data that you can represent to show backup for your ideas or backup for your proposals or backup for what you suggest that the company do, as opposed to just talking about things in the abstract. So again, this slide was taken by a product manager and shown to all of the executives, and then I saw her deck and I was like, oh, I know that slide because that's my dashboard. That's awesome. So I think if you were to put this into like a summary phase, I think what you need to consider is that Amazon has all types of information that you need to aggregate, and you need a smooth place to be able to create dashboards and look at this data more centrally. So having spend and performance analytics in a tool like Wavefront is tremendously helpful. You want to have high availability of all of your critical cloud services, and having a metrics tool like Wavefront allows you to verify that. Having a tool like this gives you much faster troubleshooting, which means your mean time to recovery and mean time to detection will go down. And as I gave the example before, having metrics, making them available to everybody in your team means that you get an easier approach to making business decisions based on metrics as opposed to just based on not metrics. So I'll bring Clement back up to give you the details.
Thank you, Demetri. So obviously, it's very exciting as you look at Box's journey as they move to a metrics-driven organization, moving to the cloud, engaging their even business leaders on using metrics to make their decisions. So I think one of the questions you have in your head is, how can I do that today for my company, right? So Wavefront is a SaaS product, and it has, every one of you could actually go to wavefront.com today and actually get a trial. And I assume this is AWS reInvent, so most of you guys probably have workloads on AWS today. And so with AWS, what we have actually done on Wavefront is you could give us a credential, a read-only credential to your AWS infrastructure, and we would actually pull those metrics on your behalf through CloudWatch, through APIs and CloudTrail, and pull them into Wavefront. So you already immediately can get visibility into your infrastructure, whether it is EC2, ELB, ECS, costing, reservations, spot instance, the pricing that Demetri was showing, we actually incorporated that into our product, so you could actually do analysis on top of that yourself today without actually installing any piece of software or instrumenting any code. Obviously, the platform itself is most powerful when you do the full stack, where you have full visibility from your infrastructure, your cloud, your applications, all the way to your business metrics. But there's a very easy step where you could start this journey with us, just like Box did a couple of years ago. What I want to do, I think Stella's telling me, is that we are going to have a draw for a speaker, and obviously we should get Demetri to do the honors. Raffle tickets? No? We have quite a lot. Okay, so what we got is, let me read that. It's 297496. Yay! So what you get is a wireless speaker from JBL. And everybody should have a lens cleaning cloth on the chair, which has our URL for signing up for a trial. So all of you guys can go home, type it into your laptop, and get started. Thank you. Thank you, Demetri.